The police chief, Brian O'Hara, with quite a bit of new information about this shooting and what they're learning about the shooter and the victims involved. Perhaps the biggest piece of information he revealed was that the shooter fired 116 rounds of ammunition into that church, which, of course, led to the death of 2 children, and 15 other children were injured, 3 adults injured as well. We also heard from the acting U.S. attorney for Minneapolis, or for Minnesota, I should say, who talked about what they are learning from the investigation. And in particular, they've gone through the writings, the videos, the social media history that the shooter left behind. He described him as someone who had a hate for everyone. He had a hate for African Americans, for Jewish people, for Christians. He said the shooter appeared to hate all of us. The one group that this assistant U.S. or acting U.S. attorney said that he did not seem to hate was that he idolized other school shooters and talked about them in glowing terms in some of the writings that he had. He also said that they've conducted search warrants on 3 different locations where the shooter at least spent some period of time, and said that right now they've talked to his father but have not yet had any communication with his mother. Let's now go to NBC's Shaquille Brewster, who has been on the scene there in Minneapolis since shortly after this shooting took place. Shaq, those were my big takeaways from this. You're obviously covering this very closely. What else did you hear from the chief and the law enforcement officials there that jumped out to you?
Ryan, I think you really explained it well. I think if I were to add one thing, when you mentioned the amount of shots that were fired into that school, the chief saying, and this detail was new, that those shots were fired despite the fact that one of the guns in the shooter's possession jammed. There was a malfunction with that weapon. So that just gives you a sense of the amount of firepower that this shooter had when the attack occurred. But right before this interview, Ryan, I had a one-on-one conversation with the chief, and one thing I asked about, and you heard him allude to it a little bit here, the idea that it's not clear if investigators are going to be able to find a motive, to really understand why this shooter attacked this church on this day as children were sitting inside praying. And he expressed some frustration with that idea. And a lot of that goes to the writings that investigators have been able to go through left behind by this shooter. Some have been made public, but investigators, including the chief, telling me that there are many writings that have not been made public that they still have yet to process. And you heard from the acting U.S. attorney and the chief describe the mentality, what they've been able to pull out from this shooter so far, and they described it as one of hate. Everyone essentially was a target of the hate that was harbored by this shooter. One other nugget that I got in the interview and that was confirmed in that press conference there is the idea of who all is participating and who all is cooperating with members of law enforcement. The chief telling me that there is no one who is not cooperating at this point, though acknowledging they have not been able to speak to the mother of the shooter. Apparently, she lives in another state, so they're still working to figure that out, Ryan. But I think you really get a sense there is a lot of material that investigators have in their possession as a result of those 3 search warrants of different homes attached to the shooter that were executed. There's still digital data that has not been fully processed, so there's a lot of material that they're going to be able to go through. But I think the frustration that you're hearing and you're starting to hear more and more from these officials is that even after they go through all that, they don't know if they're going to be able to answer the question of why this happened.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Shaq. He described it as an unthinkable and completely senseless act that they likely will never be able to make sense of. And you could tell the frustration from the chief when he described that. He also said they are collecting hundreds of pieces of evidence, as Shaq rightly points out.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.